You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options. Facebook.com/TheOptionsInsider or via questions at TheOptionsInsider.com.
So next up we got Herb Greenberg, who's just hilarious and, well, obviously serious, got a serious research business, and Josh Brown, who's obviously serious as well, are going to come up and chat about a couple short ideas and a couple deep research and forensic accounting. Is Herb here? Oh, you're going to grab Herb? What time's your flight?
I don't want to leave the hotel at like 6.
Yeah. Where is the Herb? Herb!
There he is.
There he comes. Do you got a mic, Herb?
Herb, which is your good side? Okay. I don't have one, so.
Welcome Herb Greenberg, everybody. He drove all the way down from La Jolla. You don't need slides. Do you have slides?
Huh?
Do you have slides?
I don't have, what do you mean slides?
There he is.
Slides.
Herb is 72 today. You don't have slides.
Do you have a mic?
No, well, I'll get you a mic.
That's okay.
We're going to mic you up. Hang on. So take your time. I want to get some stories out of Herb and some ideas.
You know, in TV, we tend to be close, and this is not TV. They put you very close in TV. Thank you. I'm just gonna do this because I've heard that you can't hear when you're just have this on here. So.
All right.
Yeah.
You're just going to rock it like that?
I'm going to do it like this because I think people can hear that way.
All right. First of all, how many people are having a good time at Stocktoberfest 2016? Say yeah. Say yeah! Now just the ladies. No. That's every year, guys. Every year. All right. Herb Greenberg is with me. Herb Greenberg is... you'll tell your story a little bit better than I will, but just by way of introduction, I've been reading Herb's stuff since he was a columnist on TheStreet.com, and he had been writing for newspapers way prior to that. Herb called the crash of 1929 publicly. Herb has been around a long time, and I've always been a fan of the stuff that he does. He takes really deep dives into companies where he thinks there could potentially be trouble that investors are overlooking. I think he's probably saved people a ton of money throughout his career. And everyone who I respect as a fundamental either research person or investor respects Herb. So I think this is going to be a really great chance for us to hear from what are some of the ideas that he's thinking about critically right now that maybe investors are not paying enough attention to.
And I apologize that my partner is not here. He got caught in traffic, and he's the brains of our outfit because he's a forensic accountant. He's a CPA, forensic accountant, certified fraud examiner, and the two of us together are right brain, left brain. And it's made for very interesting research because the way we look at things. And I think, you know, Josh...
What's the name of your company?
Our company's called Pacific Square Research. It's geared to institutions for the most part. And you know, it's interesting you say, you know, people, you make people money or you save people money. We were working on Signet. We were there about a year ago. It's a jeweler. And one of our subscribers was long, two of our subscribers were long it. And it's really interesting because one just fired us and they stayed long it. Another big fund, name you would know, wrote me a note and said, thank you. And this is an important lesson. He said, thank you. Because of your research, I overruled our analysts and we sold the stock. And that's the part that a lot of people miss in this.
By the way, for those that don't follow these tickers, what did the stock do from
when we started our research last, I think it was 115 when we started, or something like that. When we started our research last December, and I realized I thought these guys are not quite telling the truth, the stock was down about 40%. And so it was very painful for anyone who stayed long it. And I think a lot of people, whenever I'm here, whenever Howard's had me here, I always have this one message I always want people to remember, because those who do trade stocks in here, is that it's not always about shorting stocks. It's about taking that information and avoiding losing money, because somebody's on the other side of you for a reason. But this gets into this issue you and I have talked about, where I see Josh on television, and he's saying something about one of our names, and I'm about ready to throw something through the TV. Because I'm saying, but dude, I get it, what you're saying, but it doesn't quite reflect what's really going on.
I would say that is absolutely true, but in the opposite sense. I get what you're saying, but it doesn't reflect what's going on. So let's get into this very publicly and in a very ugly way.
Okay.
So Herb is somebody who I think is very logical, very sane, and very serious. And when he does work on a company and he sees that something's wrong, nothing makes him crazier, he'll tell you himself, than seeing a disconnect between the stock price and the work that he's done suggesting that there are issues. I know it drives him crazy, and I completely can empathize with that, because that used to drive me crazy. And then I was taught some very hard lessons by the market. And I think when someone's saying Alibaba, you'll definitely say your piece. Someone's saying Alibaba, there are issues with the company, revenue recognition, what they're telling the street versus what they're telling people in China, opacity, who the hell knows what they're counting as this and that, all valid. And I would never take the other side of Herb on the work that he does.
But you do all the time.
Well, no. Where I take the other side is, does that mean there's not an opportunity in the equity? Specifically, if you're a trader rather than an investor. And by the way, Alibaba is one of the biggest large cap winners of 2016 right now, despite every which way that people could be skeptical about it. And not just Herb, Jim Chanos, probably the greatest short seller of all time. And a lot of other very smart people have pointed out these deficiencies with the way Alibaba reports.
Let me tell you, let's talk about Alibaba for a second.
But the point is, if you went short and ignored price, you really paid a heavy toll. So I think that's where you and I disagree.
And that's what some people, remember, some people go short. Some people who have sticky money can start a short position and keep shorting it all the way up if they want to. Some people can decide that they're going to wait for the thing to crack before they decide to put on a short position. This is what the hedge funds at short will say to me. We know more about Alibaba, and when we were here last year, those of you who saw me here last year, Don and I talked about it probably. Don has done over 2,000, my partner Don Vickery has done over 2,000 hours, man-hours, well over, of research into Alibaba. We know it forensically better than any single person anyone on the planet. And we believe there are serious issues. But we also believe, as a result of what we know, a result of the fact that the regulators, which are investigating the company, if they don't do something, it'll be off to the races we believe, with things many companies could do that are not necessarily honest. We think that it is a dangerous short and a dangerous long. And I see what the company's doing, Josh, and I see why the stock turned. Remember what happened. I was in Bilbao, Spain, at the basement of the Guggenheim last May or June, when the SEC, when the company disclosed in a filing overnight that it was being sued by the SEC. And I'm in the basement, I'm on vacation, my wife's saying, what do you, I say, I got a business, I got to work. So I'm on my phone sending a note out to my subscribers so they're aware of it. I was on CNBC from the top of the ship I was on that night, just giving a phoner because of the time difference. I was on your show. I was on Fast Money, and I put Don on Street Signs, and it is on CNBC. And the stock took a hit then, and since then, old complacent attitude has come in, and that is the complacent attitude that accounting doesn't matter, no one's ever going to care. The SEC isn't going to do anything, and we would never just do an accounting story that relies on regulatory intervention, because that's tough. But this is such a big deal in our world. So, we look at something like this, and we know there are significant issues. And what they did brilliantly is they turned around the street because the analysts, the sell-side analysts, do not understand. They've told me this. I know the sell-side. They've said they don't understand the depth to do the kind of research we've done. It's way over their heads, and they'll acknowledge it. So the company, as brilliant as they are, effectively has created a story that they're becoming transparent, okay? That we're transparent and we're going to tell you X, Y, and Z. So they've created this concept of that the key metrics we used to use that you should look at when we went public are not important anymore. Instead, look over here. Now, I will tell you, that's always, always, always a red flag. And then, as they started this story and the stock starts going and the analysts are suddenly saying, they have this crazy discounted cash flow analysis that we've already picked holes in, or some of the parts of the whole analysis. So the stock starts rising just because it's now got some momentum behind it. Now, we started our research a year ago, June, stock was 90. So it hasn't gone, the stock, since then, you can think about how we think about it. Stock went down to 60. Someone could have made money off it if they're short it. Stock's going up. It hasn't gone that much against it. And we don't short these stocks. We're not involved. But I want to say one thing before you say it. I want to say one thing. This is an important thing. So 2 weeks ago, Joe Tsai from Alibaba, who lives in La Jolla, who I've been on CNBC saying, hey, we'd like to have lunch with you. We're 15 minutes away. He's never responded. Joe Tsai is at the Delivering Alpha conference with CNBC. Jim Cramer asked him a question. He goes, Herb Greenberg and his firm, Pacific Square Research, they think you're buying revenue, meaning basically you're investing in companies and they're basically doing what's a lazy Susan and buying from you as a result of the investment.
You mean like social leverage?
Exactly.
Okay.
So Joe Tsai's answer was, that's not correct. He said, they haven't read our annual report and they haven't read our disclosures.
And then he called you out. He said, where's Herb?
No, he actually said, where's Joe? He didn't say, where's Herb? He said, where's Jim? Because Chanos was who he was asking for then.
Okay.
And the research we've done with Chanos, we've done independent research. Our research has paralleled his, and coming to the same conclusion. So what's interesting is, he said, we wrote a thing to our subscribers saying, not only have we looked at every disclosure, more disclosures than he's looked at, read everything that they put out, we know what they haven't disclosed, but should have disclosed. So we're armed with that kind of information, watching this, and it's sort of like, and I don't want to get into a political thing here, it's like watching Trump and you go, holy man, how's this happening? And you watch this stuff and you watch what's going on the street and you say with Alibaba and you say, this just doesn't make sense, but we get it. And that's where you're going.
So you used the term just now, momentum. And I think momentum drives you absolutely nuts.
Reverse momentum does not drive me nuts, by the way.
Sure. So let's talk about the momentum in Alibaba. Because I don't think the people who are invested in the stock discount everything that you and the bears say about it. However,
they think they're too smart by half. They think they'll know. There'll be a bell that's going to be rung.
Howard, he's filibustering. So this is really important because I think what gets lost in the discussion is that for some people, it's not a company, it's a stock. And look, let's be real. The people who are running money at the end of the day, their job is not to report back to people how great the companies are. Their job is to say, how much money did I make for you? And you know that, and everyone in this room knows that. And when you have something like Alibaba, it's extremely unique. This is a massive, what's the market cap? 200 billion?
It's big.
It's enormous. There are no $200 billion companies that trade with that level of liquidity that are not in the S&P 500. There just aren't. There's nothing that big like an Alibaba. So when you're a hedge fund, your job is to deliver upside that's uncorrelated with the S&P. Well, this is the mother of all uncorrelated large cap trades. And so when it's going in the right direction, and Tepper is long, and all the big hedge funds are long this name, they almost all have to be in it And I think that drives the momentum, because then they can say, well, look how uncorrelated we were to the S&P. Look how much money we made. If you run a $10 billion hedge fund, there is no other choice.
But if you
Alibaba
run a $10 billion,
is the vehicle.
Here's what I don't understand. If you run a fund and you're long it, I used to think this about Jim Cramer. Let me just tell you this thing. When Jim ran his fund, I always assumed, he had analysts working for him, and I always assumed, because he's so smart, that he basically took all the information in, he wanted to know the negative, and he was playing the odds, and he knew when to make a change. In this case, though, I'm not convinced, because they're not if they're not subscribing to our service, they're not doing the forensic work, these big funds, if it's Tepper or others, to know what the full risk is. They may have heard Jim Chanos talk about it, but they haven't seen our work. We recently had a very huge, well-respected person who was involved in a long strategy that involved Alibaba come in and take our service because they wanted to, they needed to know the depth of the negative story.
So
I'm
getting the wrap-up time, but I want to ask you this last question because I think it's really key. So what if somebody says, okay, Herb may be right, we just don't know when it's going to matter?
That's what they say. That's not what they, that is what they say.
Right, that's what everyone says. So
doesn't matter till it does.
Well, that's true, but it probably doesn't gap down to zero when the news surfaces. So what if I say, Herb, I'm going to listen to you. I'm long the position. I'm making money. And by the way, this applies to Valiant. This applies to a lot of other stocks that make money for a long time until they don't. Tesla. So what if I say, Herb, you're right. However, here's what I'm going to do instead of getting into the foxhole with you right now. I'm going to say either I'm in this thing or I'm waiting to short it. And then when I get the market signal that Jim Grant says, great quote, he says, being a contrarian investor means having people agree with you eventually. So in other words, I'll eventually accept that the market's going to agree with you. And at that point, there will be a tipping point in price.
That's right.
The stock, the volume, it'll all be fireworks. And then I'll get out, or then I'll initiate my short. What would be wrong with pairing your research with technical signals? Would you be opposed to that?
I think people do that on their own. I'm not opposed to it at all. I think it's a brilliant thing to do, but I think that you need to. I do think that's what quite frankly.
So that's what I'm doing on TV when I say Alibaba is working. It won't always work. Maybe you'll eventually be vindicated.
Maybe.
I'll let price tell me when that time comes, rather than hope and pray I can guess the timing. Fair?
Very fair.
Herb Greenberg, ladies and gentlemen.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.